Alrighty, quite a while ago I told some of you guys that I was going to try and get my superannuation, which is effectively like your 401k, your IRA, whatever you want to call it, like your retirement fund basically. I was going to try and get that into what's known as SMSF, Self-Managed Super Fund. And I used to know somebody who had theirs in a self-managed super fund. You basically got to set up a trust fund. The trouble is, I forget exactly how it goes. I did read up a lot, and then he's re-explained it here, all on these papers. You basically, when you set up a trust fund, I think it's got to be controlled by two people as a minimum, or it's got to be through some sort of a company structure where you have a minimum of two people. But it's treated much as though it's its own entity. There is a shitstorm of a way that as one person you can create another entity that you also control, and then it'll be you and this entity as the second person who is actually just a shell company that you control. It's just nothing but a couple of papers. So that, if you're a single man, you can control it completely yourself. But a lot of people just use the option of using a relative, such as a brother or sister. Now, it needs to, every year, it's got, even though this is a superannuation fund, it's somehow got to have its own tax number, have an audit performed on it every year, and produce a financial statement every year. The initial setup, you are looking at, how does it work here? Basically $2,500, and I believe you continue to pay $2,000 a year just to have it. So quite simply, that's just to get somebody to produce the financial statement for you, to do the audit for you, and all the associated tax return and all that bullshit. It's $2,500 to set it up, and then $2,000 every year to keep it going. So I won't be getting any silver or anything like that in it. It's blooming bullshit. These mobs, they can go and do whatever they want. They can gamble it in the bloody casino, probably. They can stuff around with derivatives and junk bonds and friggin' subprime mortgage tranches and all this bullshit CDOs and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's theoretically my money, and I've got to go through a whole stack of bullshit if I want to manage it, whereas they can do whatever they want because they're a superannuation fund. And the other one they like to do here, they do this all the time here, this is just standard accepted practice, is you got bloody life insurance and total and permanent disability insurance. And they start charging you for the life insurance that you never requested to buy, you were never asked if you even wanted it. They just start taking the life insurance out. So as your boss is putting the money in, which I think is about 12% of what your wage is, but he can't take it out of your wage, he's got to just pay that separately. They're taking out this bloody life insurance money. And I've had ones, holy smoke, as high as $3.50 a week. And the one I did have was about $1.50 a week, something like that, and I got it cancelled. I thought, bloody hell, I know I'm worth more in assets than I am in debt, quite dramatically. My debt to asset ownership ratio is pretty shockingly high. on the asset side. And I thought, what's the blasted point? I've got no dependents or whatever. And even if I did, you know, there's probably a better way of dealing with it all anyway. Like invest in a bunch of silver bars and say, well, if I'm dead, there's something to back you up. But yeah, it's unless you got $100,000 or more, you can forget about it. Now, I'm getting 2.2% from these dickheads who are managing this money. Yet I have seen times, and I've got the ability to buy more or less silver certificates from the same bullion dealer I buy real silver from. And, you know, I've seen the price of silver jump 20% in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. 20% in 6 or 8 weeks compared to 2.2% in a whole year in 52 weeks. Holy smoke. You know, it's bloody ridiculous. The stupid thing is, you have got to show every year that you've made a profit in your self-managed super funds. Although during the GFC, a lot of people lost at least 5%, if not more. I know of people who lost thousands, family members lost thousands in the GFC. You know, and they pick it out and go, you know, you have earned minus 5.5% this year and shit like that. Yet, if I have a self-managed super fund, I have to show a profit every year, and if I don't show a reasonable-ish profit every year, more than inflation, well, they can actually take my own self-managed super fund off me and give it to a super fund. I don't know if I can even choose what super fund will be getting it, but they can take the control of my superannuation in my self-managed superannuation fund out of my hands. That's what they can do. And say, you're not making as much of a profit as these superannuation funds, or you're not really getting anywhere, you're just bumbling around, and then they give it to a superannuation fund. So much for it being your friggin' money, you know. What if you're deliberately taking a loss for years, waiting for a recession, and then it goes kaboom and goes through the roof, like silver and gold does? You know how George Soros made most of his money? He betted that the exchange rate mechanism between the German mark and the British pound, which was like a set ratio of how much you'd get, that the government of Britain maintained when you know, turned German mark into British pounds, and I think vice versa. I don't know exactly how it all used to work with that, but it was a set ratio you could transfer it at. And they'd say, okay, 1 British pound is worth a certain amount of German marks, and you just... Anyway, during the reunification of Germany, George Soros said there's no friggin' way they can hold this exchange rate mechanism because the reunification is going to cost bucket loads, to the point it's going to affect the value of the currency. And there's no way that if the value of the currency of the German mark is going to change due to the massive cost of the reunification, that the British government will be able to hold the exchange rate mechanism. So he betted more than his entire company was worth. And one evening, about, it was sort of dark enough, the sun had gone down, they come out and announced that the exchange rate mechanism had finished. It was to be discontinued, and it was game over. And in that one announcement, George Soros made $10 billion. Most of the money made by George Soros has been when things turn to shit. He's better that they turn to shit, that they're going to turn to shit, He was right, and he makes the money. Most hedge funds make money when things turn to shit. Your superannuation fund is likely to put some of your money in a hedge fund. So why the bloody hell, if I'm using the same tactics of betting against the market for maybe 7 years, 8 years in a row, waiting for a recession, and when the recession finally hits, I make an absolute colossal amount, in which case I suddenly unload and move into something else which I would like to move into, that is seesawing, you know, a bit like when there's a recession, silver goes through the roof, and iron ore and all the iron ore miners in Australia go down because the demand goes down. So you sell out your silver and you buy shares in BHP, which on top of that, you got to wait a little while, but they'll start, you know, when the economy comes back, the demand has gone up way, way more than when you're in a recession. But I couldn't use that sort of trading tactic because if I don't make a profit every year, they're going to take it off me and give it to a superannuation fund to manage, and it's no longer going to be in my control. And believe me, that exact scenario I've been talking about, I think might not be a stupid move if it doesn't completely spiral out of control and we lose fiat currency altogether, which if we do, I'll just hang on to the silver. If we don't, or I don't expect we will, maybe it'd be a good move to go into BHP shares because they also pay you dividends. So when the iron ore starts getting moving again, oh, by the way, it's got a shockingly low debt ratio to asset ratio. And when they pay your dividends and the economy gets moving, your dividends increase. But you've also bought them at the bottom price. But I couldn't try that with my self-managed super fund. And I can try it with my own money, but I tell you what, to be quite honest, after all what he told me, I honestly don't even feel like it's my money. I mean, to me, it's just frickin' numbers on paper, because that's probably all it is in reality, with all the bullshit they're doing with blooming bailouts and, you know, the government using money it creates out of thin air just to pump up bonds that are basically junk bonds to, you know, help the market along. One of those is secretly creating a real estate bubble in America, and Mike Maloney has covered that. And I've been hearing a bit of strange stuff about Sydney recently too, which Sydney might be getting a bit out of control with house prices as well. We could be in for a little bit of a readjustment. It never sort of really crashes fully, the property market here. It just readjusts pretty dramatically. It gets right out of control in the bad areas. I mean, in the really nice areas, rich people areas, it gets right out of control. And they had after GFC, it actually went higher and higher, the property market. And then it was just getting out of control fast. You know, it was going like America fast. And then she all fell to bits. And from when just before it fell to bits to when it hit the bottom, some properties lost 41% of the value in the real nice areas. In the shithole areas, it didn't really change much. But, you know, they might have lost 20% or so. But I remember them announcing that the property price, and this is before it really took off, before it really sped up, it was going, oh shit. You know, some properties were going up $1,000, $1,200 a week, more or less. They gained 25% in a year at one point, but property on average at the time was about 16% when I bought my other property. And I figured, well, an 8% interest rate ain't too bad if the price of the properties are going up 16% a year, or like a, you know, I thought, well, that's the interest rate's only half what the increase in the value of the damn property is, so I better, I'm better to buy it as opposed to keep waiting, buy it on credit as opposed to keep waiting. And that, when I sold that, that's what helped me basically fix this place up. So, yeah, anyway, there you go about the self-managed super and a little waffle on the real estate market.